It's here, Davinci Resolve 18.5 is now officially out of beta and the final version is live and available for everyone to download on all platforms. Well, hey, to get your hands on it, simply head over to the Blackmagic Design website, which I've linked down below, or you can head over to the Davinci Resolve support website. Alternatively, you can open up your currently installed version of Resolve, click on Davinci Resolve top left, check for updates, and the new final live version of Davinci Resolve 18.5 should appear. Now that applies if you're currently on the 18.5 beta as well. Simply open it up, check for updates, the final version should appear, download, run the installer, and you'll be ready to go. It's also been updated on the iPad as well. So if you're an iPad user, open up the App Store, find Davinci Resolve for iPad, update, boom, job done. Now, as you probably already know, Davinci Resolve 18.5 is one of the biggest updates we've seen in quite a few years. So I'm going to do a real quick recap, run through some of the big and small improvements that Blackmagic have made for both the free and studio versions of Davinci Resolve. But before we do, I need to borrow 20 seconds of your time to thank this video's sponsor, AUDIIO. AUDIIO is a music subscription service that has tons of awesome music and sound effects that you can use in literally all of your projects, from YouTube, video games to TV and podcasts, with just a single license. And you can get your first year of all of their goodies for just $59, which is 70% off using the code ALEX70 at checkout. Links down below, so yeah, go check that out. So what have we got in 18.5? Well, the big ones are of course the inclusion of some really fancy new AI features within the studio version. The first one being auto-generated subtitles, something that people are asking for quite a while. They're now officially here. We have auto-generated subtitles in Davinci Resolve 18.5 Studio. I've been using them for a while in the beta and I can confirm they work really well indeed. If you want to see for yourself, turn on the closed captions on this video because all of those were generated within Studio itself. They're now available in 15 different languages. When they first released, it was just English, but now you have 15 different languages to choose from. All you need to do is simply click on Timeline from the top menu, create subtitles from audio. Then you've got a couple of options to select. You can leave the language as auto or select the language as required if you want to, and then hit go. It will scrub through the timeline, create all of the different subtitles for you. You'll then get a new subtitle track, which you can customize as you usually would. That also works now on the cut page, which is another bonus, and of course on the iPad. You can also then export those subtitles directly from the edit page by simply right-clicking on the track, export subtitles. The format you want for YouTube is SRT without formatting. That's what I've done for this video. Or when you get over to the deliver page, you can choose to have the subtitles exported or even baked directly into the video from the subtitles menu within there. Simple. There's also audio transcriptions, which allows you to build up your edits using an auto-generated script. Again, limited to the studio version, but it's really clever and can save you loads and loads of time. They also added the ability to automatically delete gaps, which again, super clever. All you need to do, select one or even multiple different clips from your media pool, right click, and then come down to audio transcription and then transcribe. It will blast through all of those clips. This is in real time. As you can see, I'm getting about 50x speed, and then you'll get all of your clips across the top and then the script within. So we can just go through, we can look at all of these different things. We can select the bit that we want. So I want this bit adding to my timeline. Click the button and it drops it straight on there. And if I want to automatically delete gaps, gaps are these little markers here. We simply click on the three little dots top right hand corner, remove silent portions. That'll get rid of all of those gaps. We can highlight a bunch of stuff, drop it on the timeline, and it's got all of the gaps removed. Super simple. You can even export that auto-generated script out of Davinci Resolve into a text file if you want it. And you can even do the audio transcription on a pre-existing timeline as well. So if you've created a rough timeline full of gaps, just right-click on the timeline, do the same thing, and it will give you a script of that timeline, which you can cut up and put onto a different timeline if you need to. Again, that is also available from the cut page and the iPad version as well. Winner. Now, talking of the cut page, that's received a bunch of improvements for everyone, both free and Studio. And the main thing for me, it just means that it's way more usable, especially if you're on a laptop and on the iPad too. So the first few additions, there's 2 new little menus over on the left hand side of the timeline, which gives you access to some of those new tools if you're on Studio, but it also gives you access to some new things if you're on the free version as well. You can now toggle ripple on or off. So if you prefer it to work more like the edit page where it leaves gaps on your timeline, you now have the ability to do that, which is pretty handy. And the big one for me, which makes the entire thing way more usable, audio is now finally detached from video on the cut page. And again, exactly the same on the iPad, which allows you to do things like J and L cuts. You can also then change the volume of different tracks. You can apply audio effects to the entire track. You can apply things like voice isolation to an entire track. It just opens the cut page up to actually do some proper full-length editing, whereas before you had to start on the cut page and then jump over to the edit page to do any audio stuff or whatever. You can now do way more on the cut page. So that is a massive win from me. To do your J and L cuts, if it doesn't look like you actually have the audio track, all you need to do, move your cursor over an edit point, come down to the bottom where the audio track is, and your icon will change. Now if we click and drag, we can do our split edit on the audio like so. To do your track level volume, simply click on anything on that track. So I've got this video highlighted, open up the inspector, and there's 2 additional icons at the top. So this one is the clip, and then this one over here is the track. So if we go to track, we can then set the volume for the entire track, as well as enabling voice isolation if required. But what about the edit page? I hear you scream. Well, there are some little updates for everyone on the edit page, so we're going to blast through these really quick in our super quick edit page quick fire round. First up, you can stabilize multiple clips in one big go. Massive time saver. You used to have to do this individually. Now all you need to do, select all of the clips that you want on the timeline, open the inspector, stabilize, and it will smash through them all together. Winner. There's now a custom option within the pixel aspect ratios. If you're shooting on any anamorphic lenses, especially these Sirui 1.6 lenses, you can now simply right-click the media, go to the properties, select custom from the pixel aspect ratios, type in 1.6, and you're good to go. No more guesswork, that will just work every single time. We have per timeline backups, so you'll never, hopefully, lose any work again. First of all, make sure that you have your timeline backups enabled by simply going to Preferences, User, Project Save and Load, and then enable the timeline backups. Then as you make changes within that timeline, if you want to go back to any point, you simply right-click on the timeline within the media pool, and you'll see Restore Timeline Backups within there, and then you'll see all of the backups. Now, the cool thing with this, if you select to restore a backup, it won't overwrite the current version of the timeline. It will give you a new backup version of the timeline within your media pool, so then you can either keep working on the current one or go back to that backup. Job done. Retime Curve now defaults to retime speed rather than retime frame, which is generally what people want to use when they're trying to do any sort of speed changes, so it just saves you a few extra clicks. Way. And sticking with keyframing and retimes and all that sort of stuff, they've introduced what I call smart keyframes. Now this is hard to explain really quickly, so I've actually made a whole video on this. I've linked it down below. But essentially, there's now a context-based keyboard shortcut for adding keyframes. It is Control and then the squared open bracket to add the keyframe. That's Command if you're on a Mac. And then Alt and the squared closed bracket to delete a keyframe. Option if you're on a Mac. So if you've got nothing selected on the clip and I hit my keyboard shortcut, it's simply going to add a audio keyframe. Whereas if I've gone in and adjusted the zoom or any of the inspector controls and we then do the same keyboard shortcut, it's going to add a keyframe for our last activated control within the inspector. If we've got the keyframes open on the timeline and then I do the shortcut, it's going to add a keyframe to whatever we've got open. If I then, let's just close that, and if we get rid of all of those, do it once again, we're now back to adding an audio keyframe. A little bit confusing to get used to, but it basically means you've got one keyboard shortcut to do all of your keyframes. It just depends what you've got open. Pretty cool. There's also a handful of new effects and transitions within the free version of Davinci Resolve. Your best bet, just go in and have a play with those, just drop them on your timeline and have a little mess around. There's some cool new stuff. My favorite one is Shash It's not my favorite to look at, but you can't say shash without sounding like Sean Connery, so shash. What time does Sean Connery arrive at Wimbledon? 10ish. All right. Sticking with effects and transitions and whatever else, there's now a much quicker, simpler, easier way of changing the default transition length. Simply drop a transition onto your timeline, give it a click, open up the inspector, change the length as required, and then you can simply click this button to set the default length of all transitions next time you add one onto the timeline. Again, just saves a few clicks. Another one that's super useful for everyone, but especially us YouTubers out there, you can now export a still image directly from the cut page, the edit page, and the color pages. All you do is simply click on File at the very top, Export, export as still, and then save the file format that you want, and job done. Super easy. Cache has always been a bit of a killer within Davinci Resolve. It can balloon and then be a bit of a pig to try and get rid of these giant files. It's now made much easier thanks to the all new Cache Manager. Click on Playback, delete Render Cache, open up the Manage Cache Data. You can delete all of the cache for the current project, the current database, or even look at all of the databases and delete all of the cache from there. If you open up the index and then go to tracks, you can now reorder your video and audio tracks by simply clicking and dragging. Again, not a major thing, but it just makes life a little bit easier if you want to reorder your tracks on the timeline. And now you can also export your videos directly to TikTok if you so wish. First, make sure to go to Preferences, System from the top, and then Internet Account, and sign into TikTok from there. Then you can either export and upload directly on the edit page now, because they've also added a quick export button with a preset for TikTok. That's available on the cut page, the edit page, and the color page. Or you can go the usual way via the deliver page, select the TikTok preset, configure it, export it, it will render the video and upload it for you. Woo! Jumping to talk about color. Talking about color for just a short moment, you now have access to per timeline Resolve color management. So you can use the awesome built-in auto color management for different color spaces within the same project. So you no longer need to do it from the project settings, go to the timeline properties. There's now a new color tab on there, and then you can change the color space as you need to. So you can have multiple different timelines, all with different color spaces set within the Resolve color management. There's also a new Relight Tool, which is available for studio users only, but it is available on the color page and the Fusion page. It allows you to do loads of cool stuff. I haven't made a video on that, but loads of other people have, so I've linked those down below. It creates sort of a depth map so you can get realistic shadows and all that sort of fun stuff. Really cool for doing day and night scenes and that sort of jazz. They've added more finesse controls for the magic masks, and they've improved the tracking overall, which is crazy because magic masks have already been awesome for however long they've been around, and they've just got even better. So yay, I use magic masks all the time, so that is never a bad thing at all. And they've improved performance for spatial noise reduction for Apple Silicon users. I've got an iPad and a MacBook, so I fall into that category. It's now apparently 2 times faster, so again, mega. Jumping on to Fusion. Fusion now gets support for importing Universal Scene Description files, or USD files. Again, not something I've messed with. It allows you to import 3D models and that sort of stuff into Fusion to do some really cool comping. I haven't talked about it, but Jay Lippman has. So again, links below. Go have a look at what you can do using those USD files. There's a new multi-merge tool on Fusion as well, so you don't need to mess around using a million different merge nodes anymore. You can use a single multi-merge node and plug tons of stuff directly into that one. It works like layers. You can rearrange them, toggle things on and off. Really, really cool. I do quite a lot of stuff within Fusion, so that's going to make my life way easier. And the depth map. Previously only available on the color page, that now joins magic masks as one of those things they've ported over to the Fusion page as well. So you can create depth maps within Fusion, which gives you the ability to do even more cool stuff with less effort directly in Fusion. If you're on the studio version, of course, because that is limited to the studio version only. Now, they've also added some cool new remote monitoring functionality. Again, studio only, but essentially it means you can run a clean feed of whatever you're doing in Davinci Resolve over the internet via the cloud to another device. So if someone wants to have a look at what you're doing, you want to show someone a project, you can do, and it's really clever. So this here on the old iPad, this is running on my PC. This is the project, and as I scrub through, it will automatically update, and if I hit play... Yeah, I'm totally aware, by the way. There I am. Now you do need to be on Blackmagic Cloud. That doesn't cost you anything. It's free. You just need to make sure you have an account. Then you click on Workspace, Remote Monitoring, sign in, set up the stream essentially. Then you send a code to the client. They log in with a free Blackmagic Cloud account as well. Enter the code and boom, they'll see your full screen preview. Now the client needs to have either an iPad or an iPhone with the monitoring app installed. That is totally free to download. So if they're running an iPad or an iPhone, it's totally free for the client to use. They don't need to pay for anything at all. There's no support for Android, and as far as I can tell, they have no intentions of supporting Android. Or if the client is using Davinci Resolve Studio installed on either a Mac, Windows, or Linux, they can open the remote monitoring app from their own device and do the same thing, and then they'll see your feed. Windows and Linux systems, though, do require a compatible NVIDIA GPU. So there you go. It's a pretty cool feature, kind of niche, just for those professionals, really, but it is pretty snazzy. And that's about it. I think I've covered most of the key things. There are, of course, others I haven't mentioned, but I think that covers most things. If I did miss anything, let me know down below, and let me know which you think are the best upgrades in this Davinci Resolve 18.5. Go download it now, have some fun with it, and I look forward to seeing you next time. See you later.